Well, hello again, guys, for the first time from here in Tivat in Montenegro, and what I am presuming will be the only time yet. I'm not even sure if they've got a football team here. In fact, up until 2 hours ago, I hadn't even heard of this place myself. Now, in this video, I'm going to take the chance to, if I don't get hit by a car, several cars, I'm going to take the chance to reflect on Newcastle's summer transfer business and look ahead to the start of the season. It feels like the start of the season, given the asterisk there is next to those 3 games and the turbulence that was played out in Fort Newcastle United. Just as you probably picked up the lightning there, I think the heavens are going to open now. Yes, I am going to talk about Newcastle in this video, but first of all, how am I here? Well, I was on my way back from Belgrade, covering England when my flight was cancelled, so I invoked the spirit of Kate McAllister. There was no other way of really getting back to Newcastle, so yeah, I booked a flight to Montenegro. I've got a night here, and I get back to the UK tomorrow. Now, the lady in the reception said, just follow the sea and you'll find the town centre. Now, this seems to lead out to a pier, so I'm not going to go down there. It's part travel, part football, so yeah, here I am, and let's talk about Newcastle United, because it does feel like the start of the season when I eventually do get back to the UK and go and see Eddie on Friday morning. There's a hell of a lot to talk about. It's the first time he's addressed us since the Alexander Isak saga finally came to an end. Goodness, the lightning here really is quite something. I don't know if selfie sticks conduct lightning. Let's hope not. Look at the port. Wow, there's nothing like the putrid aroma of yacht fuel. The whiff of affluence is there. Yeah, it seems a pretty well-to-do place. This, much like Gosforth. So on we go. In Newcastle's transfer business now, I think they've just about got away with it, is the saying I would use. It could have been far better. For me, I'm on the record as saying that if Isak was going to go, and there was always that feeling from my end and my information from when I was out in the Far East early on that Newcastle were open to that sale. I think it would have been far better if they negotiated that at the start of the summer, if he was going to go eventually, and then have that money to bring in the players. Now, if the theory goes that you don't want that money because teams hold you to ransom, well, come on, they were kind of held to ransom anyway with Wissa and Woltemade, who, they've certainly overpaid for this, or in terms of what an open market should dictate for a 29-year-old, with 1-2 years left on his contract. But that's okay. We'll get to Wissa, and I'll get to why I actually think Yoane Wissa is the best signing of the lot. But yeah, for me, if they were going to do things differently, the Isak deal should have been done sooner, and given them a full summer to run it, bringing in those replacements, and just remove that distraction and all the toxicity that came with it, because it has absolutely undermined the opening weeks of the season, cast a cloud over it, and there's a massive cloud over me now, and I'm going to get soaked rather. So it is going to be any port in a storm here. The first bar I see, which is quite an apt analogy to use. We're going to dive in there. So yeah, on the outgoings front, Isak should have been done sooner. It wasn't. It is what it is. But on the incomings, that is ultimately what's going to make the difference for Newcastle. And I use that phrase. They're just about got away with it. Now, why do I say that? Because I think they've brought in good players. I don't really believe they've improved the starting 11. But when your starting 11 is so good, Newcastle do have a good starting 11. It's easier to improve that starting side from a position of weakness, like the new ownership and Eddie Howe inherited 4 years ago with a team in the bottom 3. It's much harder to do that now when you've got a team who's a Champions League side. So improving the starting 11 is difficult. It's undoubtedly weaker for the loss of Alexander Isak, but they've improved the squad, the depth of the squad, and that was important given how we saw this struggle 2 seasons ago in the Champions League. And that is something Eddie's got to evolve to as a manager. Now he's got the options to be able to use 2 right wingers and have those different options in midfield with Jacob Ramsey. Yeah, in terms of lighting, guys, not that I welcome the lightning, but it certainly does. It's better for video production when I am illuminated like that. Right, we're just walking through a park here beneath too many trees for me, given the weather and the threat of electrocution. So let's get away from these trees. And yeah, tell you what, I'm going to press pause now. This is getting wet and probably a little dangerous. I'll see you again in 2 minutes when hopefully I was going to say a Serbian beer. I'm not in Serbia anymore. I'm in Montenegro. But hopefully I've got a nice Montenegrin beer in my hand. Okay, see you in 2 minutes. Right, okay, a change of plan. Good morning from Tivat. Now, as you can see from the footage last night, the rain didn't stop and I had one Montenegrin beer and then another, so I decided to postpone until the morning. And you can see Tivat in all its beautiful glory now. There's the Adriatic behind us and some dark clouds, so let's be quick with this. And I was in the middle of analysing Newcastle's summer business from this very stretch. It probably looks very different 12 hours later, and let's just go through them in positional order. First of all, Aaron Ramsdale's come in on a £4 million loan deal with an option with a view to that permanence. Now, it should have been James Trafford. Absolutely, it should have been James Trafford. It should have been 12 months ago when Trafford was telling anybody who would listen that he was on his way to Newcastle United. That was the move he wanted. That was the player Eddie Howe and his staff wanted, the one who would allow them to evolve into a side who plays with the ball, playing goalkeeper, who had 10 years of his very best ahead of him, a future England goalkeeper. The profile, everything was there. But then Paul Mitchell came in last summer and he took over negotiations with Burnley. Now, as is his want and as is his right, he looked at the terms of the deal and tried to drive a better bargain for Newcastle. But my information is that annoyed Burnley. It annoyed those at the very top, including Chairman Alan Pace. Now, I completely lost sound there. This is fast becoming an ill-fated video, just as Newcastle's pursuit of James Trafford was ill-fated. I was saying that Mitchell coming in the negotiations led to a breakdown, and a breakdown of relationships as well. It annoyed those at the very top, including Burnley chairman Alan Pace, when they came to resume negotiations. This summer, those relationships hadn't been mended, which is why we saw the protracted barter and the up, the down, the 40 million, and then had to be a British record fee for a goalkeeper. And they never got quite there in terms of that agreement. When they eventually did, Manchester City were alerted to the situation. They then were in need of a goalkeeper and look, yes, hello, good morning, and looked at James Trafford in the package there, given that they did have the buy-back clause and all of the terms around that. And at the 11th hour, they swooped in and took Trafford. And that left Newcastle to evaluate. They'd lost the goalkeeper who they thought was going to come in and compete with Nope in the isolation of this season and then go on to be their number one and allow them to evolve, like I said, into that ball-playing team. But when Trafford wasn't that goalkeeper, they didn't then want to pivot, just for the sake of it, to another of a similar profile, just because of age really. So they looked at Aaron Ramsdale. It's a £4 million loan fee, which is sensible, with that option towards a permanent. And for this season alone, Ramsdale will compete with Pope. Now, I cover England. I've seen both goalkeepers a lot, be it in training or in matches. And I do think Nick Pope is the better of the two right now as we stand here. But is there a massive difference between them? No, probably not. So for me, this one makes sense for now. It improves the goalkeeping department. There's certainly been a little bit of housekeeping there with Vlachodimos going out, Martin Dubravka going out. And in terms of a 1 and 2, Newcastle are stronger when they were last season. So if you look at that, I would say that's a tick with regard to the goalkeeping department, even though bringing in James Trafford would have been the preference for the club, you know. But my fringe collapsed there. That deal ultimately collapsed too, and Trafford is gone now. So the goalkeeping situation with regards to that succession plan is one they're going to have to revisit next summer. Now, on the subject of succession plans, Malick Thiaw, it's centre-half, that right-sided centre-half who they've been looking at for so long. We thought it was going to be Mark Guéhi last summer. Were they ever really backing for Guéhi this summer? There was mixed messages on that. I don't think there were. What they didn't want to do was enter into negotiations with Steve Parish as the storm comes in. Timely, I told you this video was ill-fated. They didn't want to enter into negotiations with Steve Parish at the very start of the summer because history tells you it would have lasted all summer, and that's the last thing they needed to be dealing with to the backdrop of the Alexander Isak saga, of course. So Guéhi was put on the back burner. They looked at other centre-halves in Italy and in France, but Malick Thiaw is one who they have monitored for a while now. Now, the concern with Thiaw would be that Newcastle paid a package of around £35 million it'll go up to. Earlier in the summer, Milan had agreed a deal of around £20 million to sell Malick Thiaw to Como. So in the space of a month, 6 weeks, they've paid £40 million more than a previously agreed deal. Now, that would be a little bit of a concern, but what happened in that time? Well, Max Allegri came in as AC Milan manager. I was out in the Far East when Malick Thiaw played, in fact, and he liked what he saw. On top of that, there is the Premier League premium tax, and Newcastle, given all of the noise around them this summer, they were never really in a position of strength with with any negotiations, given that absence of, and I don't blame the guys there on the inside, I've said this elsewhere, the absence of a sporting director, the absence of a CEO, no real clout and cachet at that C-suite executive level when it comes to negotiating. Other clubs probably did look in on Newcastle and saw them as a soft touch, a club with a void and a vacuum of real leadership in positions that they had themselves. So because of that, they were never really in a strong point negotiating, not at all. So Malick Thiaw comes in, and the fee is the fee. It's more about the player at the end of the day. Now, I see, some were getting quite excited about him. Apparently he's got a very good profile and goes on to be a good player and Football Manager. But come on, I always say this, you do not know if a player is good or not, or going to be a superstar or indifferent until you watch them play week in, week out. And on Thiaw, what I would say in the tick column is that he's got a good profile, scope for improvement. When you listen to the guys in Italy who have watched him week in, week out, they say at his very best, he is very good. He's comfortable on the ball, and he's got, when I say there's scope for improvement, because you look at his size, and you've got an image in your head of the type of centre half he should be. Apparently he's not really that, so that is why I say there is something for Eddie Howe and the coaching staff to work with him. And if you're going to back any coaching staff to improve any player, it'll be those guys inside Newcastle United. So Thiaw is one who, I don't think he's going to come in and start. For me right now, the two best centre-halves at the club would still be Dan Burn and Fabian Schär, and the best centre-half at the club by a distance would be Burn. A lot of guys there want, some want Sven Botman in the team. Sven Botman's got a lot to prove to himself, first and foremost, that he has got that durability and get back to the level we know he can. But for now, it's Burn and Schär. But hopefully, we do see a little bit of Thiaw, especially in those Champions League matches where he does have that experience. So always back those guys to identify talent. Listen, look at the recruitment record. With any signing, you've got to say, post-takeover, they've absolutely got it right. I really do struggle to point to any that haven't worked. So, yeah, Malick Thiaw, want to watch how he develops. Going up into the midfield, Jacob Ramsey, I really like this signing. He's a player I've admired for a long time. And what I don't get is there's these doubts around his... I'm just going to avoid the sodden patch which I walked across last night there. We'll go on to the main road. Now, Jacob Ramsey, there's a lot of doubts around his fitness and availability. He played 39 times last season for Aston Villa, so I think a little bit much is being made of that. Whenever I've seen him play, I've liked how progressive he is, and we saw that down at Leeds. It was limited evidence. Funny enough, he did go off injured after 45 minutes. And the evidence of that first half, I thought he was good. I thought he was bright. He looked to take his team up the field, and again, we talk about profile and we talk about Eddie Howe and his staff making players better. Look what they've done to Tino Livramento, Lewis Hall, Anthony Gordon, Dan Burn, 4 non-cap players into England internationals. And Jacob Ramsey is another one for me who could go on and become that. And in the midfield, is he an upgrade on Joe Willock? Yes, he probably is. For now, could he offer more over the course of a season than Louis Miley? Well, yes, given he's got more experience, as much as I think this could be a real breakthrough season for Miley. So for Ramsey, for me, I like that as a signing. And he's probably going to play more games. You always have this, don't you, when a new player comes in and folk will look at it and say, well, where's he going to get in the team? Well, it doesn't work like that. And it doesn't work like that, especially not over the course of a 60-game season. And we've seen Joe Linton pick up the injury just before the break, although the news on him is good. He might even be able to feature this weekend against Wolves. So Ramsey, yes, I see the sense in that. Going forward again, let's go out to the right wing, Anthony Elanga. I won't talk too long on Elanga because we have seen him already and I've spoken about him. What I will say is I'll reserve judgment or even really a strong opinion until we actually see him play with a centre forward, which he hasn't done so far. And I think his, as well as Harvey Barnes to a degree on the other wing, their confidence was affected by the opening 2 games in which they played well. 1 point down at Villa, didn't score a goal, 0 points against Liverpool, and the 2 goals. This would be a wider concern, so I'm sort of deviating a little bit here, but Newcastle haven't scored a goal yet with 11 men on the pitch, and they haven't scored what I would call a Newcastle goal, where you see the building blocks, everything clicking into place, and you're like, yeah, there you go, that's a goal they're going to score repeatedly this season. The 2 goals against Liverpool came from absolute chaos, and they couldn't score down at Leeds either. And I think, and this is in mitigation really, it's a degree of understanding for the wingers, including Elanga. Let's just reserve judgment until you see them with Nick Woltemade or Yoane Wissa, because so far from Elanga, yeah, he hasn't played well. Come on, let's not lie. That final product when he's got into those positions, centre forward, I know centre forward, he can finish better in the isolation of himself. So I'd still want to see more from Elanga. But again, we come back to that word, profile. Is there scope for huge improvement there? Yes. And that pace, that is absolutely what Howe wants in his forward players. Now, Elanga, playing for a different team, it's not Nottingham Forest anymore. He's got to find a way to use that pace, to impact with it. And so far, I don't think he's worked out a way how to do that in a Newcastle shirt. But Elanga at £55 million, yeah, let's see where we go. Now, onto the forward players. And it took a while to get there. And we'll talk first about Nick Woltemade. Now, people have said to me, as we're heading into town here, people have said to me, was Nick Woltemade on that list originally? Well, no, he wasn't. Nick Woltemade was never a name that was put forward to me during those early days of looking for strikers, João Pedro, Liam Delap, Hugo Ekitike, Benjamin Sesko, and that was because perhaps there was that assumption that he was going to go to Bayern Munich. And I think the fact that Bayern Munich were interested and they did want him, and there's a feeling in Germany that Bayern Munich do not sign bad players from the Bundesliga. They only go for the very best. So I think in terms of that is absolutely something for you guys and observers of Newcastle to take as a huge positive. Now, what I would say by way of concern, and you're allowed to say this, goodness, we haven't seen him kick a ball yet for Newcastle. So this is all, very fluffy preliminary reflections, but what I will say is he doesn't strike me on first evidence, and I did watch the full hour against Northern Ireland the other night when he came off, having not really done much in the game. He doesn't strike me as someone who will drop into the Newcastle team immediately and play to how, like Alexander Isak did, that running in behind, that pace. Woltemade, to me, looks like someone who wants the ball at the feet, who works in those tight little spaces, those pockets, has wonderful feet, has a decent finish when he gets the chance, but they're going to have to learn to play with him, and he's going to have to learn to play with them. And I think that is going to take time. But in terms of, we'll say it again, in terms of profile, everything is there for Newcastle to take him and take him to the next level and then the next level again. And you would absolutely back Graham Jones, Jason Tindall, Eddie Howe to do that work with him. Now, that is why we get the number 6, Yoane Wissa. That is why I think out of all the guys we've spoken about during this video, he was the last to come in, but he was the number 1 in terms of importance. Because if Newcastle had dropped Woltemade straight into it, there's a danger he could have looked like Benjamin Sesko. Benjamin Sesko, a player at Manchester United now, similar profile to Woltemade, come out of the... Yes, hello, viewer. Maybe not. Who's come out of the Bundesliga. He just looks like he wants the ground to swallow him whole right now, does Benjamin Sesko. So, because of that, to put Woltemade in there without getting in that second striker, even though I think we'll see Wissa emerge as the first striker, would have been incredibly dangerous. And Newcastle did not want to do that. There was a duty of care almost to the player, to Woltemade, not to do that. But Wissa is ready-made. He's oven-baked. He can go in with the number 9 on his back and he can get the ground running. Kick the ground running. Let's hope he doesn't. He might break a foot. Let's hope he hits the ground running. As we come down here now into the port of Montenegro. I touched on it last night, didn't I? Yeah. There's nothing like yacht fuel to engender an aroma of affluence. And this is, we're coming to a pirate ship here as well. It's a strange place, this. Super yachts, palm trees, pirate ships and electric storms. Sounds like Newcastle United summer. Yoane Wissa. Now, regardless of the fee, I'm not particularly bothered about the fee per se. It's about what he returns. And 19 goals last season, 4 less than Alexander Isak, in a team in Brentford who aren't as good as Newcastle. He's the one who could just flip everything in, not just in terms of what he does himself, and I think he will come in and score goals, but then, touched on it earlier, that makes Elanga better, that makes Barnes better, that makes Gordon better, it makes the midfielders feel better about themselves, it gives the defenders something to defend. There's nothing more dispiriting as a backline if the best you're hoping for is a 0-0 draw, as we've seen at Leeds and Aston Villa. They did their jobs. Those days they were let down by what happened in the final third. So Wissa, for me, is the one who, when the season starts on Saturday against Wolves, he'll go straight in at number 9. He's the one who can just flip everything on its head. So for me, if I was picking out of the 6, he is the one who comes in now and he's given the starting jersey, and he's going to be huge for Newcastle. He's a player I've always liked, and yes, there was a lot of noise around what he did during the summer down at Brentford, similar to Alexander Isak. At Newcastle, we're not denying there weren't similarities there, but Wissa was never fined by Brentford. He maintains, and he put it on record, that there was written evidence of a promise to move this summer. Within 48 hours of him releasing that statement, he joined Newcastle, even though they only beat the buzzer at the 11th hour, 30 seconds to go. A representative, Yoane Wissa, was running through the training ground screaming his name. Wissa had stepped out onto the veranda at the back there of the training ground to FaceTime his wife and children, to celebrate, you know, the sun rising on a new dawn in their lives, without realising in that moment, in that minute, he was still a Brentford player. The signature went through on the phone, and with 30 seconds to go, he was registered. Eddie Howe then FaceTimed Yoane Wissa after 9 o'clock. A couple of minutes later, I think the first thing he said was, "Yoane, why are you crying?" Yeah, I'm told it was a pretty fraught couple of minutes, but that would have been a very difficult, different conversation had the deal not gone through. But it has, and for me, it's the one which is going to change Newcastle's season. So where does all of this leave Newcastle? Ins, outs, turbulence, noise, 3 matches where they've left behind 7 points, undoubtedly. What I will say is, in summary, as long as they've got the manager they've got, they'll be okay. He, given everything I've been exposed to with him over the last, approaching 4 years now, as long as Eddie Howe is there, Newcastle will be okay. And I suppose you guys as supporters, that is absolutely something to cling to, even though it has been a difficult summer. I did a talking last week over at Wycombe Football Club, and I sat and I had a beer with 4 or 5 guys afterwards who I didn't know and I hadn't appreciated. They said that it really got them down this summer, the Isak situation, players not coming in, the club being mocked as rejection FC, and you know, as a journalist sort of caught up in it, you're so wrapped up in doing your job and just trying to bring news. And yes, you know, Eddie Howe touched on it at one point. He said, for you guys, this is good, innit? It was exciting, there was plenty to go at, but I do have a realisation now that dust has settled, just how difficult it was for Newcastle fans. So I suppose part of the point of this video, the sound now, will absolutely be going as the storm prepares to come in, and I've come far too close to the water, to the Adriatic there behind us, those clouds. But I think the clouds are about to clear on Newcastle United's season. I think they've bought good players, a couple of very good players, and they've got a fantastic, fabulous manager, and everything is set there now for them to go forward and enjoy a brilliant season. Okay, enough from me. Hit like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for joining me here in, I was going to say sunny Montenegro. Yeah, thank you for joining me here in Montenegro. I'll see you back on Tyneside tomorrow, Friday, when I'll be speaking to Eddie Howe. It's certainly going to be a hair-raising occasion on Saturday against Wolves. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.